I believe you meet people for a reason. Things happen for a reason. And even if it's bad, you have to use these experiences to find what is good.
What is the thing or things that you've had to quit in order to become successful?
I certainly had to quit
thinking it was too
the
big.
person that I was to get here.
being afraid that I was going to make mistakes. I quickly learned that the road to success is paved with failure.
Would you rather give the best gift or the best advice to people?
The best advice.
Would you rather be a model or a photographer?
A photographer.
Would you rather be on a road trip across the US or Australia?
Across the US.
Nice. Thank you guys so much for tuning in again for another episode of Successful Quitters, a podcast that highlights the thing or things individuals have had to quit in order to become successful. My name is Sara Nunez, and I am your host. Today we have someone wonderful. She has enjoyed a 40-plus year career as a writer, and now she's retired, as young as she looks. She has time to pursue her childhood dream of writing fictional characters who make a difference, which is wonderful. She's written for daily newspapers and trade publications, and her freelance work has appeared in regional trade magazines, specifically those specializing in space exploration. Wow, Lori. Lori is a space junkie and worked for NASA in public outreach for nearly 20 years. She graduated from the University of Maryland, College Park, with a BS in journalism. And now she has this novel called Always Think of Me. What a beautiful name, which releases in April 2024.
Actually, it's releasing April 2nd, a day after my birthday.
It's releasing sooner,
Yes.
at the beginning of April 2nd, guys. Keep that in mind.
Yes.
In addition to that, she launched The Accidental Blogger, which spotlights everyday people who overcome adversity. Thank you so much for being here, Lori Keesey.
Thank you, Sara, for inviting me. I can't wait to get into this conversation.
Likewise. Lori, let's go back to your beginnings.
Okay.
Lori, and where was she at 5 years old?
At 5 years old, I was in the first grade learning how to read. And I had a teacher, and her name was Miss Edwina Molnex. And she was like, I don't want to speak negatively of anyone, but she was built like a battle axe. I mean, she was a no-nonsense lady. She was what they called back then spinsters. In other words, she had never been married, and she really ran a tight ship. And for punishment, you would have to sit in her big brown chair in the back of the room, and it was huge. It was like these, oak armchairs that principals' offices had. And of course, I spent some time in the big brown chair because I just like to talk.
You know what's interesting, Lori, is that a lot of my guests remember their first teacher.
Yes.
And the reason why they remember this person is because either this person made a huge positive or negative impact in their lives. And the reason why I go back to the beginnings of people's background is because these years, this age is very impactful on the things that we end up doing in life, and we don't realize it. And parents sometimes don't have the time because they're dealing with so much, don't have the time to think that these years are crucial. And you could be in an amazing home, but you don't know how teachers could be at school. So it's important to be aware.
And you know what? When I was growing up too, there wasn't a lot of emphasis on the formative years. I mean, people, I was born in the 50s, late 50s, and I don't think my mother had the first clue about, oh, we have to be very careful about what we say or how we act in front of the kids. It kind of rolled with the punches a little bit more. I think people are a lot more aware of that today. But speaking of that teacher, yes, she made a huge impact on my life. I caught on to reading very quickly, and it was my forte, and I loved it. But she also was the one who encouraged me to write. So that's very
Mm.
important. When I wrote this little story and, illustrated it and all that neat stuff. And she took my mom, grabbed her by the arm during one of those parent visitation days and said, pointed my little story to my mom and said, look, I think, and I'm listening. And she goes, I think she has some writing talent and you need to encourage it. So
Wow.
I never forgot that. And that's where this whole idea of, majoring in journalism and becoming a newspaper reporter and all that neat stuff, came to fore because of this particular woman.
How powerful is it that one person believing in you can change your entire life?
I think so. And that's why I think teachers are so important. And my youngest son is a teacher. And I keep saying, you just don't try to get through the day. Try to make a difference in some kid's life, because a lot of the kids he's dealing with, they don't have dads. They're being raised by a single mom. And, that's tough. That's tough for that mom. But it's also hard for the kids too. Kids
Absolutely.
need male role models. And I say, that's what you might need to be for some of these kids. So be aware of that when you're dealing with these little kids. And he's an elementary school teacher. So
I love that you say that. I love that you bring that up for our audience, how it's important to see how much of an impact you can make, and not only just the children and not only teachers, but in general, just a word of encouragement, just a little support. Everyone's going through life, not knowing what's coming at us. So it's always good to be there for each other.
yeah.
And so we got to high school. And how was high school, Lori? How were you, friendly? Did you keep to yourself? What was it like?
I was a cheerleader. There you go. There you go. Sums it up. I was a cheerleader.
Awesome.
And I,
Good.
and my part-time job, and only lasts for a summer because it was hideous. When I was in high school, I worked at the Jimmy Cone. So it was a little ice cream store in Damascus, Maryland, where I grew up. And it was a tiny little place. And people would back up for, it looked like miles from my little window. People backed up and the ice cream machine wasn't working properly. And then the ice cream was soft ice cream. And then, it would melt and fall off the cone. And it's just a big mess. And I hated that job. I hated it. I
Yeah.
had my
And
first wreck in there too. I mean,
you're,
backed into a car. My father he was very particular about his cars. And to have one of his cars get wrecked, you were like in deep doo-doo. So
did
anyway.
you feel when you did that, did you feel like you never wanted to drive again? Or were you like, I'm ready for the next one?
To me, a license meant freedom. And it was so funny when my kids were growing up, they waited. I mean, as soon as I turned 16, I'm getting my license. I am out of here. I am, yes, Daddy, I'll go uptown and get you your ice cream, because then I get to drive around and check in on my friends who are congregated in the parking lot at the grocery store. I mean, yeah, I didn't mind at all, but I did have problems backing up. To this day, backing up is a real challenge.
Is there anything that you thought, this is what I want to be when I grow up? Or
Yes,
plans that you had after high school?
I have always wanted to be a writer.
Mm.
So, I didn't know what type of writing it would be. And so when I was in high school, I became the editor of the high school newspaper. And then when I went to college, I worked on, it was called the Diamondback. It's a daily newspaper at the University of Maryland. So this had always been the career path for me. And frankly, I'm kind of lucky, because a lot of folks, they struggle, over what they should major in and what career path they should take. And it was always, I just knew.
So clear what your calling
Mm-hmm.
was.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Were you a good student?
Yes,
Mm.
I was. I like to learn. And
Nice.
I was a very good student. And my parents didn't have to holler at me to do my homework. I always did it. I just, and I would always want to be like in the top group in the English or, reading class or spelling or what have you. I wanted to be in that top group. I didn't want to be in the middle.
What was your relationship with your parents like?
I'll tell you, I am just thankful that I had my parents. They struggled in their own relationship, but they did a bang up job with their kids. Now, my dad wasn't very demonstrative in showing his affection, but that was okay. It was, but we knew that he loved us and that he cared for us and he was strict. I mean, we had chores. We had to have a job when we were old enough to work. And my mom was, the type of woman, she's still alive. She's 89. You could always talk to her. You could always tell her about your little love problems. And I would always go to my mom and tell her about my boyfriend who was running around on me. And she would always give me this amazing advice. Play hard to get, Lori. Play hard to get. They'll come back. And you know what? That's exactly what happened. I played hard to get. And this guy is like calling me up and all that sort of stuff.
It worked.
It worked.
So, do you think it's a good balance when you have that kind of parenting, when one is a little more strict and the other one is a little more lenient?
Well, isn't that funny you should say that? Because actually my mother was the one who enforced the discipline. My dad laid down the law and she had to enforce it because I was like grounded every other week, it seemed. And she had to enforce it.
Would you say you're more like your father or your mother?
Oh my goodness.
Behavior-wise.
That's a tough one, Sarah. I think I'm probably, you know what? I'm a lot like my dad. Yes, indeed. You ask my kids. Yeah, my kids used to.
You have an amazing energy, Lori. You have an amazing energy that comes through your camera.
Oh, well, good.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, because he could get really mad and, start yelling and stuff. And unfortunately, I did some of the same things when I was raising my kids to the point where they called me psycho mom. And my husband was the one who, he was a little more lenient. And so I was the enforcer. Yeah. Good cop, bad cop.
Yeah. And then you went into what? You went to college and
yes.
You went into your career path.
Yes. My first job, I moved, I'm in Maryland and moved to Dover, Delaware. I worked for the Delaware State News, and that was a great job. I had the best editor. His name was Frank Fantini. Learned a lot from him. And what was so funny is that for whatever reason, I didn't have the confidence, that I should have had. And I don't know where it came from, but he kept saying, what is unique? You're very good. You're doing a good job. We love you. But I don't understand this lack of confidence. So I had to work on that a little bit, but I'll never forget one of these assignments. I don't know. Maybe I was trying to please him. There was the Associated Press reporter. He was a single guy. I mean, things were kind of wild back in those days in the early 80s. And this guy goes, across from the Dover Air Force Base, there's a massage parlor, but it's not a massage parlor. And so my boss, Frank goes, Keesey. And I go over there. He goes, I want you to go over there to that massage parlor and apply for a job.
No.
So I look like Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. Okay, honestly, all dutied up in my little skirt and all that sort of stuff. And the lady, she had a whole bunch of makeup on, and she's interviewing me. She goes, well, would you mind going in the back room and taking your clothes off and standing before the manager? I said, what? I said, no, I do. I will not do that. And that's all I needed, isn't it? For my story that I had plastered above the fold, and that place went out of business the next day. They were shut down.
What was it that you had to do, or what are the things that you did to gain confidence?
Well, I think as I went ahead and did things I was uncomfortable doing, as demonstrated by accepting that assignment. I mean, I was scared to death. I'm not a very good liar either. And, trying to pretend that, I don't know what that woman must have thought. Or maybe she thought it, who knows? I know, but it was a very uncomfortable situation to be in.
Yeah. And so, were you happy writing what you were writing back then? Or did you feel the
Yes.
need to start writing something else?
No, I was perfectly content being in journalism. I really liked getting out there and talking with people and then writing a story and getting both sides. That was very important. You got both sides and trying to be fair to individuals. And I remember I interviewed this one man. He was a very, very wealthy man, and he had gained his wealth by filling in wetlands so that people could, like little trailers, because in Delaware, southern Delaware, it's where the beaches are. And boy, people hated him. Well, the environmentalists hated him because he was filling in the wetlands, and people were jealous of him because he was incredibly wealthy. And as I'm talking with this man, he tells me exactly what had motivated him to do so incredibly well in his career. And it was all because he loved his wife so much, and he wanted to prove to this woman's father that he was worthy of this woman and that he would take care of her forevermore. And it was this demonstration of love. It took me back because I certainly didn't expect it. But it's fun getting these little nuggets out of people, and suddenly your whole perspective changes on that person. That person isn't who other people say this person is. We're all complicated and we're all motivated by different things. So yeah, I always enjoyed being in journalism, and then I was okay when I got out of journalism. I moved on to South Carolina, worked for the Greenville News, Spartanburg Bureau of the Greenville News, and that was interesting. I was the cop and court reporter. That was a hoot. I learned so much in that job about the court system, how juries are selected, the strategies that lawyers use to either prosecute a case or to defend a case. Covered, I think, 2 capital punishment cases. Hideous crimes, honestly, appalling crimes. And it was fascinating.
Yeah. And how long were you there for?
I was there for a year. I got married and my husband couldn't find a job in South Carolina. So I'm from the DC area, and we moved back to the DC area where he did have a good job.
What
And
was your husband's career?
pardon me, he's always been in construction. So he owned his own construction company over time, but he was a project manager for a builder in the suburbs of Maryland and Virginia. So, and it took me a long time to get a job because you're back in a totally different media market. You're in DC. And, at that time, everybody wanted to be a journalist. So I ended up working for McGraw-Hill, working for a trade publication. And it was not a fun job because I covered coal mining, surface mining regulations. Do you know how boring that is?
And when was it that you decided I am going to start writing my own thing?
Writing my novel, or I ended up going into business for myself. I became a freelancer, and that's where I started with more magazine type work. Then I ended up working for a company that supported NASA. I've always enjoyed NASA. I just love the things they do. And that's how I became a public relations consultant, communication consultant for the chief technologist at the Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland. So I was there for a long, long time. And in fact, we moved. We really wanted to go somewhere new, and we moved to Tennessee. And because of that job, I had always worked remotely. And because of that job, I was able to move down here and continue working for the chief technologist. And I think it must have been, oh my goodness, oh, I can't remember how long. Until then, I retired and
And when
started.
you retired was when you said, I'm going to write my own novel.
That's right. That's right. We experienced a tragedy,
Hmm.
and I really, I, it was, I really needed to figure out why our son died. And it was so tragic. It was, it was a terrible accident. And so I had to contemplate, okay, why did he go? Why did he die at the age of 33? And I started thinking about, the meaning of life. And I know I'm not trying, there's nothing too profound about this, but I had to go through it my own way and try to figure out, okay, what was his life about? What is my life about? And how can I turn this into something positive? That was foremost in my mind. I wasn't mad at God. I wasn't, things happen, but my husband and I both were unbelievably bereft. My son we moved down here, and because my husband was in construction, my husband started flipping houses, and we bought some rental properties, and my son moved to Tennessee as well, and he became our property manager, and he was a very good property manager too. And so not only did we lose a son, but we lost a business partner.
Yeah.
And because we trusted him implicitly, we didn't really know the back room dealings that he had to go through managing these properties. And it was a
Mm.
horrible, horrible experience trying
What
to
is it like?
manage this and deal with your grief. And so I did. I started thinking about, okay, I've always wanted to write a novel. What Now is the time to do it. And I used some of the lessons or the things that came to me through prayer, on what this novel would be about.
Lori, what is it like to lose a son at such an early age and having to start over? What was it that helped you to continue to move forward without him?
I'm glad you asked, because I think this is important. I had taken a bereavement class, and the book we used, the underlying message in that study was that we Americans, Westerners, we know how to acquire things. We don't know how to let them go.
Hmm.
And understanding that my son I didn't own him. He was a gift. And his time on this planet, he fulfilled his purpose, and it was time for him to go back where he came from. And I'm telling you, that's what helped me. I'm going to see him again.
Yeah.
It's just, I can't see him on this plane. That's all. And that's truly what got me through it.
How wonderful that you were able to get a hold of information that is this powerful that got you through such a tremendous situation that's unexpected. Just
Right.
the way life is, because we don't know what tomorrow will bring. We don't know if we're going to be here tomorrow or the ones that we love. And so you had a full business running full throttle with your son running it, and he's not here anymore, and you had to take care of it as well, right? You were retired by that time, yeah?
No, I was not.
Not
I was
yet.
not yet retired.
Oh
My
my
husband
goodness.
took up the lion's share, and then we had to try to find a property manager. And hiring a property manager is a completely different thing than having your son, who has a vested interest in running it. Totally different ballgame. And he was on it, and we had difficulties. We really did. So we ended up selling the businesses. We did. We couldn't take it. Within
Yeah.
6 months after he passed away, these rental properties were gone.
Mm. I mean, it's different the way one will manage things as others will. And like you said, when it's just a management company, they have no interest of
Oh,
their owning the property.
no, they don't care. He cared. I remember
Yeah.
a few days before he passed away, I was with this one property we had. I said, well, what do you think? Do you think maybe we should sell that? And he got so mad. He goes, no. He goes, Mom, this is my legacy.
Oh,
And I sometimes think about that. That was also, it was Memorial Weekend, and, I had made this dinner, and he was actually a very good cook. And we're critiquing the dinner. And I said, Ty, do you think this is restaurant quality? Well, Mom, it might be, but you need to do this, that. And it was just a wonderful conversation. I had
yeah.
a different relationship with him. My husband dealt with him on a totally different level. Uh, you know how men are. They talk
Yeah.
about sports and because my husband was in construction, he was like the fix it guy. He didn't run the business, Ty did, but they talked business every day. My husband would see him almost every day. I mean, they had a very, very, very close relationship as well.
How long since you have retired?
How long? Let's see. I'm losing track. I think it's been 3 years. It's 3 years. And that's when I finally retired. My mom had gotten sick, and I'm running up to Maryland, helping my sister out, taking care of my mom. And it became impossible, to do this consulting business with NASA. So, and I was getting close to wanting to retire anyway. So I did. And that's when I devoted full time to finishing the book. I had to create a platform, so people could be exposed to my writing. So that I called it the accidental blogger, because I never had any intention of ever doing a blog. That
You know,
did not even register. That wasn't.
that's very smart to do though, because, and I'm glad that that was the case, but one of the best things that you could ever do is have an audience and then bring in a product.
Right.
Because if it's the other way around, who do you share it with? Who is going to be interested in reading, sharing, or having your book?
Yes. And you know what? Let's face it, Sarah, there are a lot of voices out there, and it's tough. It really is hard. But, if this is what you want to do, I figure, okay, whatever. I'm just going to do everything I can do to make this happen.
Yeah.
And
And
who knows
so,
what's gonna happen? Who knows?
when did you start writing it?
I started writing the novel 5.5 years ago. The first go was awful. Awful. It was terrible. I was loading it up with these silly little things, and it just dragged down the story. I'll tell you, if I have been writing my entire life, but writing a novel and writing the things I've written before, totally different. It's a totally different ballgame. And I hired editors. I took, writing classes. I attended writers' conferences. I did everything in my power to improve on what I was doing. So I highly recommend that. Even if yes, you might have a skill, but you don't know everything. And so I clearly learned that. I didn't know. I've read thousands of books, but I didn't understand the way things go in a novel. I would get so sucked up. Yeah, it's just the story arc, the character arc. There has to be a conflict. There has to be a resolution. You have to keep people engaged through that, or they're not going to finish the book. So learning that, and I think my editors, it was learning on the job.
Yeah, what it's interesting is that I was taking a screenplay writing class,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a novelist there that had written hundreds of novels.
Uh-huh.
And he was having a hard time going from a novel into a screenplay, because when it comes to a novel, you have to be very specific with details.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're just telling the story like that. On a screenplay, you're going to see it on the screen. So there's less description, but the novelist wanted to write and write and write all the action in detail to everything. And it's interesting how every kind of writing is different and it has its thing.
Yes. Yes, it's even, and also when I was in college, learning to write newspaper copy, it was way different than when you're writing broadcast copy. Even the way it was set up on the page. I mean, very different.
How do you find your voice through writing a novel?
Wow. That took some time too. I was very familiar with the protagonist. That person was easy. The antagonist also, her name is Ginny. Getting to know her took time. Um, I, she has, this character is deeply traumatized. She has experienced things that you wouldn't want on anyone. And I really needed to understand how that would affect that person, how it would change the way she viewed life. And I started volunteering at this organization where most of the, and I'm not saying Ginny is not, she wasn't an alcoholic, and she certainly, she was a clean cut sort of girl, but she was exposed to a lot of horrible things in her life. Anyway, I ended up working with moms who lost their kids, because of drug addiction. The state took their kids away. And so this organization tried to get these women back on track so that they could get their kids back. Getting your kids back is very important, not only for the mom, but also for the children. They do so much better when they're with a parent who is good at being a mom. And so I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot just because of my blog. I interview people who have overcome adversity, and I've learned so much from these people. And that really helped me when I really started falling in love with the Ginny character. And also I had written her initially some of her riveting moments. I had someone else describing this. So that removed the reader from Ginny. So I redid those paragraphs or those chapters. I put those chapters in her voice. What a difference that made. And then I was able to open up about her feelings toward the protagonist. His name's TC. It's an uncommon love story. And without her voice, you don't know what she's thinking. And she's able to tell the reader, oh, I think he's kind of neat. Am I having second doubts? I'm supposed to be, engaged. Do I really want to marry this guy? Stuff like that. So those types of things, it was a work in process. That's for certain.
What's your process, Lori? For example, with this piece of art, what did you come up with the idea? Do you outline beginning, middle, and end? Or do you just start writing? What about the characters? When it comes to every character, do you take a little bit of time to think about background and to work on background, to feel a little bit? Because every character is completely different from one another. So what is your process, the way you do things? Because everyone does it differently.
Well, initially I did sort of outline it. I knew that the Ginny character would be highly traumatized. I knew that the TC character came from a relatively nice background. I mean, his parents loved him. His grandparents loved him. He didn't experience any earth-shattering trauma in his life. His problem was he didn't know what he wanted to do when he grew up. And he got his affirmations from the world. And the world can be pretty brutal. And so he's an insecure person. So you'd have to read the book, but the tables switch and, all kinds of stuff. He's finally, he's got to stop her from doing the unthinkable. And anyway, the process. So like I said, I kind of knew him. I'll be honest. I kind of had it in my head. I knew what scenes from my own experience would be included in this novel because they worked. But it's just by rewriting it and someone saying, okay, you need more stuff here. What really is going on in your character's head? And boy, oh boy, that just opened it up unbelievably. So it was like I was kind of winging it in a way,
Yeah.
but I kind of
What?
knew knew how it was going to begin, and I knew how it was going to end, and I knew the pivotal moments in the middle. But
Yeah.
getting to those places, that was, again, sitting
I
at
think at the end of the day, a lot of these, whether it's books, whether it's screenplays, they write themselves. And characters kind of write themselves because as a writer, you can hear what one character would say, but the other wouldn't, because you can picture them. Is that how you feel? Like you can
absolutely.
picture
That is so. I'm glad you raised that. I had a woman in mind for the Ginny character. She's based on a real person. Everything
Yeah.
about her looks, the way she, everything, including her
Right.
dimples.
So
So
it's not to know exactly what they could say. So, for example, if you were to take these two characters and put them in a different situation, then these characters would react the same way because they're already characters that are formed.
that's
Yeah.
right. But I wonder if they would have met.
Right.
They met by happenstance at an outdoor music festival. And it's kind of, it was an unlikely meeting. It's also how they were able to kind of forge a relationship. That's, yeah, it was almost like they were soulmates, or they needed one another. He relied on her, and she relied on him for information.
So, do you think that when you write characters, fictional characters, they have a part of you?
Yes, absolutely.
So
It's
you
like you're the
see
mother.
yourself.
You're like you're the creator or whatever.
That's a good way to see it. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I was taking fiction writing courses years ago, my instructors always said, write what you know. So a lot of you goes into these things you write. I mean, experiences, the way you might react to something, or the way you might not react to something. But
Yeah.
a lot of you goes into it. So yeah, you're creating something from whole cloth, but it's informed by things that really did happen. It's your experiences. They have to come into play.
Yeah,
And your
because you don't know
acting,
what you don't know. So
yeah.
you can't share something that you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think writing heals?
Do I think writing heals? Absolutely. It was cathartic for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I had to go through this. I had to go through this entire process. And one of the central themes in the book is, we're not junk. We all have a purpose. We all have a job that only we can do. And if you fail to do your job, you could very well prevent someone else from doing his or her job. We're linked. We're linked. And I don't believe in coincidences. I believe you meet people for a reason. Things happen for a reason. And even if it's bad, you have to use these experiences to find what is good. And that's like the successful quitter idea. Sometimes you have to quit what you're doing to get onto the path you're supposed to be on. And you have to be courageous enough to do it. That's key too. Because
that's the biggest thing.
Stuck. Oh, golden handcuffs, maybe with a job. Oh, what about my benefits? All this stuff. But you hate what you're doing. And you're miserable. And you can't go through life being miserable.
Exactly. And a lot of times we hear this concept of once a quitter, always a quitter, without realizing that if you don't quit, there's no growth. If you don't quit continuing even without fear, there's no growth. If you don't quit bad habits, there's no growth. If you don't quit bad people in your life, there's no growth. So we are constantly quitting whether we want to or not if we're continuously growing.
Yes, very well said. Absolutely. Even people who get into these terrible relationships, and Ginny's in a terrible relationship, And, her motivations are, what they are. And she needed to quit that relationship. But, she had deluded herself in thinking that this was a good thing.
And that's a good point you bring, because right now we have a lot of toxicity in relationships. And, one of the hardest things to do is quit that person, quit that relationship. And sometimes it's the only thing that you got to do in order to reach your fullest potential.
That's right.
In order to reach the next step. And I love that.
And if you're in a really toxic relationship or abusive, you're being told constantly that you're worthless, that you'll never amount to anything. And after a while, that starts chipping away. Even the most confident person, they'll start doubting themselves. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Get away from these people who tell you you can't do it.
ASAP.
Move on.
Or in your perspective, what would be one of the most important elements needed for a great story?
I think you have to keep people wondering what's going to happen next. That page turner type of idea. You have to have enough tension there to keep them moving forward. It doesn't have to be an action novel. It's just there has to be tension. There's something going on and the reader is left hanging. Okay, I need to find out what this is. So it's like, some little foreshadowing, a little drop there, a little drop there, and you just keep people wondering what's going to happen next. That's very important. Yeah, and also you need good characters. I have novels where I hated the characters. There was not one single character who was any good, in that there was no goodness in that person.
Also one of the things that makes characters very boring, and it doesn't help you really relate to them, is lack of motivation.
Right. That's right.
So if their motivation is not strong enough, then they have no strength to push their needs and wants.
That's right. And then if you don't understand the motivation, you don't understand why they behave the way they do. You need to know that. And you don't you don't want to tell the reader. You want to show that reader through their actions, through what they say, how they react.
Most definitely. What are the best times that you choose to write? Do you write every day?
Yes, for the most part I do. I like the mornings. I'm up at the crack of dawn. I love the mornings. By the afternoon, I'm like done. I'm going to take a nap. But, I typically write every day, and I'm writing, the blog, and I have a little monthly letter I send out to subscribers. And as I think I mentioned to you earlier, I do want to, pick up some short story writing. I've written 2 and I want to write more. I think it's I love the discipline in writing a short story, because you still have to have the same tension. It's just you have to get it done in a lot fewer words.
Yeah. How short of a short story are we talking?
They'll say short story. It was, what was it? Oh, I can't remember what it was. I think it was Hemingway. It was only like 8 words. I mean, I can't even remember what it was, but that struck me as funny. Let's see, anywhere from 5,000 to 8,000 words, something like that.
And when you write the blog, or when you have the novel, right? You have an audience. What would you say your audience? Who is your audience?
I think my audience, definitely women aged, I don't know, maybe probably in their 40s on up. Yeah, probably more middle-aged women. I was hoping to get a slightly younger audience, but I think, I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm talking to people like me, and that's good. That's great. Fine.
Yeah. As long as you know your audience, and you can speak to them.
And I think, there's some younger ones, but I don't like a lot of cuss words and stuff like that. I don't like reading them, and so I try to keep it relatively clean. And I think younger people sometimes don't mind all that language, and it does bug me. So there you go.
Yeah. Are you self-published?
I have a publisher, Mascot Books. It is a hybrid publisher. So
Oh,
I had to submit a book proposal and manuscript and all that stuff, just like you would a traditional publisher. But I did, I invested. And I had someone a traditional publisher had offered a contract, but it was a small imprint. And I decided, because I am middle aged, that I wanted the rights to the book. So that's why I
mm.
decided to go through the hybrid. I have all rights to
Okay.
my material.
But what's the difference between the regular publisher and a hybrid publisher?
Well, I think the big difference here is a traditional publisher you're not paying to have your book printed. Okay. But they own all rights for 5 years or so, whatever you negotiate. And that's a huge thing. And also your royalties aren't as high. The publisher I had been contemplating, they offered a 40% royalty, which is pretty good. In others, it's a lot less. But with a hybrid, I can't remember what it is, 85%,
Mm.
90%, something like that. But I paid to have the book printed, but they offered editing services. So, and again, I had to submit a book that they would want to get involved with. So in that sense, it's very much like a traditional. It's not like
And just
a vanity press. They'll just give them a manuscript. They'll print it. No
yeah,
editing, no nothing. And that wasn't good for me. I wanted to say, okay, someone wants to publish this.
yeah. And just for the people that are thinking of writing themselves a book and have never done this before, if you're trying to do it with a hybrid, let's say, publisher, what's roughly an estimate of the investment they might have to make?
That very much varies. Okay. They would have to do what I did was I researched the best hybrids in the country. And that's how I
Mm.
found Mascot Books. There were a couple others that wanted to work with me. But their fee was a lot. It was just too expensive. I could not do that. Um, so you really have to do your research. And, and a lot of authors, and look, I'm no expert in this. I'm really not, but a lot of writers they're self-publishing. They're doing all the work. A lot of people are even creating their own publishing companies. I mean, it's times have changed a lot, especially in this industry, apparently. And again, I'm not an expert, but because I knew nothing, I decided, look, I'll go ahead and make the investment. They will handle all of the registrations. They will handle, the placements and getting on book catalogs, that libraries and bookstores use. I don't know how to do this. I don't want to know how to do this. It's just, I have no idea and
Yay.
interested.
Yeah,
But that's me. Everybody does it differently. And if you
yeah,
get a contract with a big publisher, yay, because they will help you, with the marketing. But a lot of the smaller publishers, you're still doing your own marketing. You're still doing it all.
yeah.
And that's
What,
huge.
that's a lot.
Yeah,
That's a lot, especially nowadays where you have so many windows that you have to cover, for sure.
that's
Regardless of what you take on, you still have to market it.
that's right. You have to, meet people like you. This is part of my job.
A
I
way to
love
put it.
doing it. I enjoy meeting people. I like to run my mouth. I'm good at running my mouth.
Lori, what is your rewrite process? How many rewrites did you have for this book?
Oh my gosh, Sarah, I don't even know. A huge number, a huge number.
Yeah.
The book title changed 5 times too.
Wow.
I'm not kidding. I mean,
The reason why I ask you this is because a lot of people don't understand that anything that comes to writing when it's creative goes through so many rewrites. They all don't go through hundreds, not all of them, but some will. And some they're 10, 20, 30, 100, whatever it may be, but the basic idea sometimes ends up being something else.
That's right. And, I could probably publish a novelette with all of the um, passages that I ended up cutting entirely from the book because it was bogging it down. This is you're losing the reader. There's too much stuff here. Take it out. I mean, scenes that I loved writing. I go, I don't want to get rid of it. You have to get rid of it. This is terrible. This is not interesting. Your readers are losing interest. So yeah. And don't argue with people. I mean, it's your book, but I don't know. They've been in the business. They know what they're doing. So listen to good advice.
That's a great way to see things because creatives attach to their work.
Uh-huh.
And it's hard to let go of something that you think is such an amazing idea, but it's not fitting the writing and it's not moving the story forward, which is what we want, right? If it's not moving the story forward, then it's supposed to be out.
That's right. That's right.
And did you do this when you did your rewrites? Did you have like a group of people, writers critique it, or what was your process for that?
Initially, I did. I belonged to a critiquing group, and initially, yes. And then, oh my goodness, then that whole COVID thing started. And so all that stuff sort of went away. And that's when I started working with editors.
Okay. So you would suggest to have an editor or have editors?
Oh my goodness, yes. Absolutely. Invest in an editor. Invest. Look, this is your baby. I mean, you're not going to invest in it. I don't understand people who would not consider doing that. It's very important. And if this is on your bucket list, then you need to do everything in your power to make it the best it can be.
Yeah. They have the experience. They're going to be able to guide you to a better place. When it comes to groups of writers that are critiquing your work, and you said you were part of one, when it comes to novels, how does it work? Do you guys do pages per week or?
Yeah, it would meet maybe once a month, something like that. Yeah, and you would bring, oh my goodness, I think you were allowed to present, I can't even remember the word count, but it was like 3 pages. So, and then people, and the way they did it, they did the sandwich method. Something good, meet something good. So that people aren't like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to give up. No, you would always give someone the positive, and someone would read it. And the person who submitted couldn't say a word, but someone would read the manuscript out loud. And then people would they'd go around the room. And
what a tragic situation.
Yeah, it was,
sometimes, because writers have a good week or a good month, and then another one that might not be the best.
Yeah.
My work and others is like, what am I doing here?
Yep. Oh, I've thought that all the time. And sometimes they're like, what am I going to do when I grow up? I don't know.
Is there a specific software that you use for your writing?
Software? No, just regular Microsoft.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Okay, that works. And would you suggest that if people want to transition into writing, that they're writing every day?
Some people can't do that. They can't because of their schedules. If they have a job, they have a family, they have other obligations. But try to, if this is what you want to do, well, then you're going to find time, right? We always find time for those things that are very important to you. Just like they say, your priorities are reflected in how you spend your money, right? Yes.
That's
right.
a good.
So if this means something to you, you will find time.
Yeah. What would be a message that you would send to those that are thinking, I have an idea for a book, a novel. I have an idea. Should I put it on paper, or do I not know enough to put it on paper?
I think that if you have an idea, put it on paper, because then that will help you. Okay, what are the areas that I don't know? no, if this novel idea is taking place in a certain place or time, well, obviously you're going to have to do a lot of research. And I had to do a ton of research on all kinds of things. So yeah, putting it down on paper is probably a very good idea. And I did like a very rough draft. I did, character traits. I wrote those down.
Yeah.
But then I added, during the editing phase, I added characters and gave them the voice. The chapters devoted. The book takes place in the past as well as in the present, and then you will hear from two other characters. One is Ginny, one is Uriah, and then of course TC is the primary voice throughout the book. But yeah, I would absolutely write it down. Maybe that would be good, especially if you've never been a writer. That might be very helpful. And then also take some classes.
That's a great advice. And for those that are listening or watching, guys, there are very inexpensive classes.
Community colleges.
You can find even free classes for writing, and it will make a world of difference, because the way you perceive things after a class is completely different than not taking classes. So,
what was funny? I interviewed this lady, wonderful woman, lives in New Mexico, and her writing business revolves around helping others tell their stories. And she realized that was a passion of hers when she took a class on memoir writing. And she watched her classmates, their eyes would light up when they're telling, their family stories or their stories. She goes, this is what I want to do. This makes people happy and help others get these stories, their legacy down on paper, or even, an audio file. Then she figures she has done something good. So,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
You know what? You might say, I really want to do this, but you'll say, really? I think this would be better for me.
Yeah. And also I just want to encourage people, because it's interesting to be in those classes and understand that everyone is as crazy as other people perceive you. You go into those classes and you're like, wait, they also are thinking of fictional characters. These people don't exist, but here they do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay if you have you're eager to write. I definitely encourage you to, because you only live once.
That's right.
Lori, what is one thing or things that you have had to quit in order to become successful?
Well, being successful is all sort of relative, isn't it? No, sometimes I don't think I have been very successful, but other people think I have been. So I think I need to stop. What I think I need to do is stop doubting myself. That's what I need to quit. The little voice, ignore that little voice. We talked about this when we first met. Sometimes I give that voice too much airtime, and I need to stop it.
Yeah. And I think doubt never really goes away fully.
Mm-hmm.
But at least if we can stop not doing things because of doubt, then,
Yes. And what you just said is so critical. So critical. Yeah, have your doubts, but keep plowing forward. No, don't stop.
Yeah. If you're not sure, I have a book, but I don't know if people are going to like it. I don't know, but you continue going, you write, you continue the process, you rewrite, and you publish it, then you conquer that voice.
Right. Exactly.
And so that's successfully quitting that fear stopping you. Wonderful, Lori. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you and your time.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed this conversation. You asked some good questions, interesting questions. Made me think.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for watching another episode of Successful Quitters. My name is Sara Nunez, and I will see you guys on the next one.